Sir, the numbers don't lie. Raven Holdings is a shell and it's bleeding Pinnacle dry. Nia, a 15-year-old janitor's daughter, stands firm in an Atlanta boardroom, her voice shattering the silence. She's just exposed a financial trap set by the CEO's aunt, poised to bankrupt Pinnacle Enterprises. The board freezes, betrayal thick in the air as her words unravel a web of deceit. Can Nia's truth save the company, or will the shadows crush her? Welcome to our channel, where stories of grit ignite your soul. Hit subscribe to catch our latest videos and drop a comment. Where are you listening from? Atlanta, Tokyo, or elsewhere? Stay tuned to see how one girl's gift for numbers turns an empire upside down. The twists will hook you till the final reveal. You won't believe what's next. The 32nd floor of Pinnacle Enterprises, Atlanta. Skyscraper was a cathedral of glass and steel, its polished marble floors reflecting the city's twinkling skyline like a dark mirror. At 10:17 p.m., the office was a ghost town, save for the faint hum of a vacuum cleaner down the hall and the soft squeak of Nia Jackson's sneakers. 15 years old, with a faded hoodie and a janitor's badge clipped to her belt, Nia moved like a shadow, emptying trash cans and wiping down desks. Her mother Loretta worked the vacuum in the executive suites, her silhouette a steady rhythm in the dim light. This was their world after hours, silent, invisible, essential. Nia didn't mind the work. It was predictable, unlike the chaos of her Englewood neighborhood, where sirens wailed and dreams felt like luxuries. But what set Nia apart wasn't her diligence or her quiet demeanor. It was her gift. Numbers spoke to her. Spreadsheets, stock tickers, budget reports, they weren't just data. They were stories, puzzles, truths waiting to be uncovered. While other kids her age scrolled through social media, Nia pored over library books on financial analysis, her grandfather's old accounting manuals, even the stock market app on her cracked phone. Numbers were her refuge, her rebellion, her power. Tonight, though, the numbers were restless. Nia paused outside the glass-walled conference room, its sleek table littered with coffee cups and stray pens. A tablet lay forgotten near the edge, its screen glowing faintly like a beacon in the dark. She glanced down the hall. Loretta was still vacuuming, her back turned. Nia's heart gave a quick thud. She shouldn't touch it. The rule was clear: clean, don't snoop. But the glow pulled her in, a siren's call she couldn't ignore. She slipped inside, the glass door whispering shut behind her. The tablets. Screen was unlocked, a spreadsheet open. Q3 financial projections, confidential. Nia's eyes flicked over the columns. Revenue, expenses, investments. Standard corporate fare, but something felt off, like a note played out of tune. Her finger hovered, then scrolled. There it was, a column labeled Auxiliary Fund Transfers. Row after row showed massive outflows: $500,000, $1.2 million, $800,000, all to an entity called Raven Holdings. The totals were staggering, bleeding Pinnacle's reserves dry. Nia's breath caught. This wasn't a clerical error. This was a wound. She leaned closer, her reflection faint on the screen. Pinnacle was a tech giant, its stock a darling of Wall Street. Why would it funnel millions to an unknown entity? She tapped the column header, but no details appeared. No vendor contracts, no project codes. Just Raven Holdings, a name as opaque as the night outside. Nia's mind raced, cross-referencing the figures with what she knew from Pinnacle's public filings, which she'd skimmed on a library computer last week. Raven Holdings wasn't listed anywhere, not in investor reports, not in press releases. It was a ghost. The vacuum's hum stopped. Nia? Loretta's voice echoed from the hall, sharp with worry. Nia froze, her pulse hammering. She snapped a photo of the screen with her phone, the flash a brief betrayal in the dark. Shoving the phone into her pocket, she tapped the tablet to sleep and darted out, wiping her sweaty palms on her hoodie. Loretta stood at the hall's end, hands on hips. "What are you doing in there? You know better." "Just cleaning," Nia mumbled, grabbing a rag from the cart. Loretta's eyes narrowed, but she didn't press. She never did. Loretta's world was about survival, keeping the job, paying the rent, staying under the radar. Nia's world was different. She saw patterns, risks, and truths that didn't care about badges or bank accounts. Back at their task, Nia's mind wouldn't quiet. The numbers gnawed at her. She emptied a trash can, her hands mechanical, but her thoughts were on Raven. Holdings. Who was behind it? Why hide transfers this big? She'd read about corporate fraud, Enron, WorldCom, companies gutted by greed. Was Pinnacle next? The thought sent a chill down her spine, not of fear, but of purpose. She wasn't just a janitor's daughter. She was a girl who saw what others missed. The elevator dinged, startling her. A security guard stepped out, his flashlight sweeping the hall. "Y'all almost done?" he called, voice gruff. Loretta nodded, her smile tight. 10 minutes, Marcus." Nia kept her head down, but her phone felt heavy in her pocket. The photo a secret burning through her. She wanted to tell Loretta to show her the numbers, but the words stuck. Loretta would say to leave it alone, to protect their fragile stability. But Nia couldn't unsee the truth. As they packed up, Nia stole one last glance at the conference room. The tablet was still there, its glow extinguished. She imagined the executives returning tomorrow, signing off on those projections, oblivious to the trap buried in the numbers. Pinnacle wasn't just a company, it was jobs, pensions, lives. Her mother's life. If those transfers continued, what would happen? Layoffs? Bankruptcy? The weight of it pressed on her chest, a responsibility she hadn't asked for but couldn't ignore. In the service elevator, descending through the skyscraper's steel veins, Nia clutched the cleaning cart's handle. Loretta hummed softly, a habit to fill the silence. Nia's phone buzzed. A low battery warning, but it felt like a nudge from the numbers themselves. She had the photo, the evidence, the spark. But what came next? Confronting the truth meant risking everything. Her mother's job, their safety, her future. Yet staying silent felt like betrayal, not just of Pinnacle, but of herself. The elevator. Doors opened to the basement, the air thick with the smell of bleach and concrete. Loretta slung her bag over her shoulder. "Home, baby," she said, her voice weary but warm. Nia nodded, but her eyes were distant, fixed on a horizon only she could see. The numbers had whispered, and they wouldn't let her go. Tonight, she'd been invisible, just a girl with a rag and a badge. But tomorrow? Tomorrow she might be. Something else entirely. A voice, a warning, a force no one saw coming. The morning sun sliced through the blinds of Pinnacle Enterprises' executive floor, casting sharp lines across Ethan Caldwell's corner office. At 42, Ethan was a titan of Atlanta's tech scene, his name synonymous with innovation and grit. His desk, a slab of polished walnut, held a single laptop, a framed photo of his late parents, and the tablet Nia had seen last night, now open to the Q3 projections. Ethan's fingers hovered over the keyboard, his brow furrowed. The numbers stared back, cold and unyielding, but he didn't see the trap. Not yet. Trust was his blind spot, and it wore the face of his aunt, Miriam Caldwell. Miriam, 58, was more than Pinnacle's CFO. She was family, the woman who'd raised Ethan after his parents' car accident 2 decades ago. Her sharp mind and warmer smile had steered him through boardroom coups and market slumps. Her office, just down the hall, was a shrine to their shared history. Photos of Ethan's college graduation, their first IPO, her arm always around his shoulders. To Ethan, Miriam was infallible. So when the auxiliary fund transfers to Raven Holdings appeared in the projections, he assumed she'd vetted them. He always did. Across town in the cramped Englewood apartment Nia shared with her mother, the air was thick with the scent of burnt toast and worry. Nia sat cross-legged on the sagging couch, her cracked phone balanced on her knee. The photo of the spreadsheet glowed, its numbers a silent accusation. Raven Holdings. $12 million drained. For 18 months, she'd spent the night cross-referencing dates on a borrowed library laptop, her eyes burning as she traced each transfer to a dip in Pinnacle's stock. The pattern was surgical, deliberate. Someone was bleeding the company, and Nia's gut screamed it wasn't an accident. "Mom," Nia said, her voice cutting through the clatter of Loretta washing dishes. She held up the phone, the spreadsheet's glare reflecting in her eyes. "This is theft, millions funneled to a ghost company." Loretta froze, a soapy plate dripping in her hands. Her face, lined with years of double shifts, hardened. "Nia, I told you, don't mess with their stuff. You think they'll thank you for snooping? They'll fire me." Nia's throat tightened. Loretta's job was their lifeline, rent, groceries, Nia's bus pass to school. But the numbers didn't care about their fragility. "Mom, if this keeps going, Pinnacle could collapse. Your job, everyone's jobs, they're at risk." Loretta set the plate down, her hands trembling. "You're 15. Let the suits handle it. You want us on the street?" Nia looked away, the weight of her mother's fear pressing against her resolve. But the numbers were louder, their whispers now a roar. At Pinnacle, Ethan met Miriam for their daily briefing. She swept into his office, her pearl necklace catching the light, her smile as steady as ever. "Morning, Ethan," she said, sliding a coffee across his desk. "Ready to sign off on Q3? Ethan nodded, but his eyes flicked to the tablet. "These auxiliary transfers," he said, tapping the screen. "Big numbers. What's Raven Holdings?" Miriam's expression didn't flicker. "A vendor for our cloud infrastructure. Routine payments, just poorly labeled. I'll have accounting clean it up." Her voice was smooth, practiced, like a lullaby Ethan had heard his whole life. He leaned back, the tension in his shoulders easing. "Good, let's keep it tight." Miriam smiled, but as she turned to leave, her fingers brushed the tablet, lingering a moment too long. Nia, meanwhile, couldn't sit still. At school, she barely heard her algebra teacher, her mind dissecting the spreadsheet. During lunch, she slipped into the computer lab, logging into a public financial database. Raven Holdings was a dead end, a P.O. box in the Caymans, no website, no filings. But the transfer dates haunted her. She pulled up Pinnacle's stock chart, her fingers flying across the keyboard. Every outflow matched a sell-off, shaving fractions off the share price. It wasn't random. It was sabotage. She needed more. Nia texted her friend Jamal, a senior who'd interned at a brokerage firm. "Ever heard of Raven Holdings?" she typed. His reply came fast. "Nada. Sounds like a shell. Be careful, Nia." Careful. The word felt like a cage. She couldn't be careful when the truth was this close, sharp enough to cut. Back at Pinnacle, Ethan's day churned on. Meetings, investor calls, a pitch to a new client. But the tablet stayed on his desk. Its screen a nagging presence. Miriam's explanation had sounded right, but something gnawed at him. He'd built Pinnacle from a garage startup to a $10 billion empire by trusting his gut. And now, it was whispering doubt. He opened the spreadsheet again, scrolling to the transfers. The numbers were clean, too clean, like a crime scene wiped. Nia's school day ended, but her work didn't. She rode the bus home, her phone buzzing with a low battery warning. The spreadsheet photo was still there, a digital grenade. She wanted to march into Pinnacle, shove it in someone's face, but who? The CEO? He'd laugh her out. The CFO. Miriam's face flashed in her mind. Those pearls, that smile. Nia didn't know her, but she knew power, and power didn't like being questioned. At home, Loretta was already dressed for her shift, her cleaning uniform crisp despite the frayed cuffs. "You're quiet," she said, eyeing Nia. "What's going on?" Nia hesitated, the phone heavy in her pocket. "Just school," she lied. Loretta's gaze lingered, but she grabbed her bag. "Stay out of trouble, Nia. I mean it." The door clicked shut, leaving Nia alone with the hum of the refrigerator and the weight of her secret. She opened the photo again, zooming in on the numbers. $12 million, a fortune, slipping through Pinnacle's fingers. She imagined the fallout, headlines, layoffs, Loretta's face when the check stopped coming. Nia's gift had always been her shield, a way to make sense of a world that felt unfair. But now it was a weapon, and wielding it meant stepping into a fight she wasn't sure she could win. The clock ticked past 6 p.m. Loretta would be at Pinnacle by now, vacuuming the halls Nia had walked last night. Nia stared out the apartments. Single window, Atlanta's skyline, a distant glow. The numbers were out there, waiting, demanding she act. Trust was a luxury she couldn't afford. Not in her mother's job, not in Pinnacle's boardroom. Something was rotting at the company's core, and Nia was the only one who saw it. The question wasn't whether to fight. It was how. The Heir, on the 32nd floor of Pinnacle Enterprises' Atlanta skyscraper, was sharp with the scent of polished wood and ambition. It was 6:45 p.m., and the boardroom glowed under sleek LED lights, its glass walls framing a city that never slowed down. Ethan Caldwell, Pinnacle's 42-year-old CEO, sat at the head of a mahogany table, his pen poised over the Q3 financial projections. The document was a formality, a ritual before the board's final vote tomorrow. Across from him, Miriam Caldwell, his aunt and CFO, adjusted her pearl necklace, her smile as polished as the table. The room hummed with the quiet confidence of executives, suits crisp, voices low, all unaware of the storm about to break. Nia Jackson, 15, stood outside the glass door, her janitor's badge clipped to her faded hoodie, her heart a drumbeat in her chest. She wasn't supposed to be here. Her mother, Loretta, was vacuuming the lower floors, and Nia's shift had ended an hour ago. But the numbers, the $12 million siphon to Raven Holdings, had haunted her for 2 days. The spreadsheet photo on her cracked phone was a ticking bomb, and tonight, she'd decided to light the fuse. She'd slipped past security with a borrowed access card, her sneakers silent on the marble. Now the boardroom loomed like a lion's den, and Nia was no hunter, just a girl with a truth too big to hold. She clutched her phone, the photo ready. The numbers didn't lie, but people did, and Nia knew the risk. If she was wrong, or if they didn't listen, Loretta's job, their lifeline, could vanish. But silence was worse. Pinnacle was bleeding, and every transfer to Raven Holdings tightened the noose. Nia's gift for numbers had shown her the trap, and her courage, raw and untested, pushed her forward. She took a breath, her hand trembling as she knocked on the glass. The sound was a gunshot in the room's quiet. Heads turned. Ethan's pen froze mid-signature. Miriam's smile stiffened, her eyes narrowing at the unfamiliar figure in the doorway. Yes. Ethan's voice was calm but edged with confusion. The executives, 6 men and women in tailored suits, shifted, their glances a mix of curiosity and disdain. Nia stepped inside, the door hissing shut behind her. The air felt heavier, like the moment before a storm. "Sir," Nia said, her voice steady despite the pulse hammering in her throat. "The auxiliary transfers in your projections. They're draining the company. Raven Holdings isn't registered, it's a shell." The words landed like stones in still water, ripples spreading across the room. Ethan's brow furrowed, his pen lowering. Miriam's hand tightened around her necklace, a faint click of pearls. The executives exchanged looks, one man scoffing, under his breath. "Who is this?" a woman in a navy blazer muttered. "Nia Jackson," Nia said, meeting Ethan's gaze. "My mom cleans here. I saw the numbers. They don't lie." Her voice held a quiet fire, forged from nights spent decoding patterns others ignored. She pulled out her phone, the spreadsheet photo glowing. "Page 7, auxiliary transfers. Millions to Raven Holdings timed with stock dips. It's not mistake, it's sabotage." Miriam's laugh sliced through the tension, sharp and dismissive. "Ethan, this is absurd. She's a child probably rummaging through our trash. Let's not waste time." Her tone was honeyed, but her eyes were cold, locking onto Nia like a predator sizing up prey. Nia's cheeks burned, but she didn't flinch. She'd faced worse. Bullies at school, landlords with eviction notices. This was just another fight, and the numbers were her weapon. Ethan leaned forward, his gaze shifting from Nia to the tablet on the table. "Show me," he said, his voice low, not a command but a challenge. Nia stepped closer, her sneakers squeaking faintly. She held up her phone, zooming in on the spreadsheet. "Here," she said, pointing. $500,000, $1.2 million, $800,000, all. To Raven Holdings. No vendor contracts, no filings. I checked public databases, it's a ghost. And every transfer hits before a stock sell-off. Someone's tanking Pinnacle. The room held its breath. An executive pulled the tablet closer, scrolling to page 7. Another tapped a laptop, murmuring about cross-checking. Ethan's eyes traced the numbers, his jaw tightening. "Miriam," he said, not looking at her. "What's Raven Holdings?" Miriam's smile didn't waver, but her knuckles whitened. "A minor vendor, Ethan. Cloud infrastructure. Poorly labeled, that's all. I'll have accounting fix it." Her voice was smooth, a practiced deflection. But Nia saw the flicker in her eyes, a crack in the mask. Ethan's fingers drummed the table, a slow, deliberate rhythm. "You're sure?" he asked, his tone deceptively calm. "Absolutely," Miriam said, her gaze darting to Nia. "This girl's confused, or worse, meddling. She shouldn't be. Here." The accusation hung heavy, and Nia felt the room's eyes on her, judging, dismissing. A man in a gray suit leaned back, smirking. "What's next? The mailroom kid auditing us?" Laughter rippled, but Ethan didn't join in. His gaze stayed on Nia, searching, weighing. "I'm not confused," Nia said, her voice rising clear as a bell. "I don't need a degree to see theft. Those transfers are killing Pinnacle, and if you sign that report, you're signing its death warrant." The words were a gamble, bold and reckless, but Nia had nothing left to lose. She held Ethan's stare, her heart a wildfire. Miriam's face hardened. "Ethan, escort her out. This is a boardroom, not a playground." But Ethan raised a hand, silencing her. "Let's see the numbers," he said, taking the tablet. He scrolled, paused, his expression unreadable. The room watched, the air thick with unspoken questions. Had a teenager just exposed a flaw their CFO missed? Or was she a fool, overstepping her place? Ethan set the tablet down, his eyes meeting Nia's. "You're saying this is deliberate?" he asked, his voice low, testing her. Nia nodded. "Yes. Sir, the pattern's too clean. Someone's playing you." The words were a spark in a powder keg, and Nia felt the weight of her own audacity. She'd crossed a line, and there was no going back. Ethan leaned back, his pen untouched. "Thank you, Nia," he said, his tone neutral. "We'll look into it. You can go." Nia's stomach twisted, dismissed, but not disbelieved. She turned, her sneakers loud in the silence, and walked out, the glass door closing behind her. Miriam's smile returned, but it was brittle, a mask slipping. Ethan stared at the tablet, the numbers now a question he couldn't ignore. Nia stepped into the hall, her breath shaky. She'd spoken, but at what cost? Loretta's job, their rent, her safety all hung in the balance. Yet the fire in her chest burned brighter. She'd planted a seed, and whether it grew or withered, she'd done what the numbers demanded. The truth was out, and the boardroom would never be the same. The night air in Atlanta was thick with humidity, pressing against Nia Jackson's skin as she sat on the fire escape of her Englewood apartment. The city's skyline flickered in the distance, Pinnacle Enterprises skyscraper a gleaming spear among the stars. Her cracked phone lay. In her lap, the spreadsheet photo, a silent accusation that hadn't left her mind since the boardroom confrontation hours ago. Nia, 15, had thrown a stone into the calm waters of Pinnacle's elite, and the ripples were turning into waves. Her words, Raven Holdings, a shell, sabotage, had shaken Ethan Caldwell, the CEO. But they'd also painted a target on her back. The numbers had spoken, and now the shadows were listening. Inside, Loretta was asleep, her cleaning uniform draped over a chair, a reminder of the fragile life Nia's actions threatened. Nia's phone buzzed, shattering the quiet. An unknown number, a single text. "Stop snooping or your mom's job is gone." Her breath caught, fingers trembling as she read it again. The words were a blade, sharp and precise, cutting through the courage she'd mustered in the boardroom. She deleted the message, but its echo lingered. A warning that this fight was no longer just about numbers. It was personal. Across town, Ethan Caldwell paced his office on the 32nd floor, the city's glow a backdrop to his unease. The tablet, with the Q3 projection, sat on his desk, its numbers now a riddle he couldn't solve. Nia's accusation, $12 million funneled to Raven Holdings, timed with stock dips, had cracked his trust in his aunt, Miriam Caldwell, Pinnacle's CFO. Miriam's explanation had been smooth, but Ethan's gut, the instinct that built his empire, whispered doubt. He dialed Sarah Thompson, his private auditor, her number one of the few he trusted implicitly. "Sarah," he said when she answered, "dig into every transfer to Raven Holdings. I want answers by dawn." Sarah, a sharp-eyed woman with a reputation for unearthing corporate skeletons, didn't hesitate. "On it, Ethan. But if this is what that girl said, it's not just sloppy accounting. It's a setup." Ethan hung up, his jaw tight. He stared at the framed photo of him and Miriam at Pinnacle's IPO, her smile radiant. Was it possible? The woman who'd raised him, who'd stood by him through every storm, betraying him? The thought was a splinter in his mind. Impossible. To ignore. Nia couldn't sleep. She slipped back into the apartment, the hum of the refrigerator a faint comfort. Opening her phone, she revisited the spreadsheet photo, zooming in on the Raven Holdings transfers. She needed more than a hunch. At school, she'd used the library's financial databases, but now she logged into a public records site from her neighbor's borrowed Wi-Fi. Her fingers flew searching for Raven Holdings. The result was chilling. A P.O. box in the Cayman Islands, no directors, no filings. But one detail stopped her cold. A linked account with a single name. Miriam Caldwell. Nia's heart pounded. Miriam, the CFO, Ethan's aunt, was the puppet master. The transfers weren't errors. They were theft, a deliberate siphoning of Pinnacle's lifeblood. Nia's mind raced, connecting the dots. The stock dips, the secrecy, Miriam's icy dismissal. In the boardroom, it all fit. But proof wasn't enough. She needed to act, to warn Ethan before Miriam covered her tracks. Yet the text message loomed, a threat to Loretta's job, their survival. Nia's gift for numbers had led her here, but courage was a heavier burden. Titaiti. Pinnacle, Sarah Thompson worked through the night, her office a fortress of monitors and coffee cups. By 4 a.m., her findings were a bombshell. $12 million funneled to Raven Holdings over 18 months, disguised as vendor payments for non-existent services. Each transfer bore Miriam's digital signature, buried in layers of approvals to look routine. Sarah cross-checked the dates with Pinnacle's stock data, confirming Nia's claim. Every transfer preceded a sell-off, shaving millions off the company's value. "This isn't carelessness," Sarah muttered, emailing Ethan the report. "It's a heist." Ethan received the file at 5 a.m., his phone's chime pulling him from a restless doze. He opened it, his eyes scanning the evidence. The numbers were undeniable, the signatures a betrayal. He called Miriam, his voice flat. "Meet me in my office, now." Miriam arrived at 6, her pearls gleaming, her smile a mask. "Ethan, you look exhausted," she said, settling into a chair. "What's this about?" He slid the tablet across the desk. Sarah's report open. "Explain this. $12 million to Raven Holdings, your signature on every transfer. Stock dips timed to the minute." Miriam's smile faltered, just for a second, but Ethan saw it. "A misunderstanding," she said, her voice silk. "I'll sort it with accounting. You're overreacting, likely because of that girl's nonsense." Ethan's eyes narrowed. "Her name's Nia, and she saw what you didn't, or chose, not to." Miriam's hand twitched, her composure cracking. "Ethan, I've protected you for years. You'd trust a janitor's kid over me?" The question hung, a challenge laced with desperation. Ethan didn't answer, but his silence was answer enough. "You're suspended," he said, his voice steel. "Pending investigation, leave your badge." Miriam stood, her face a storm of controlled fury. "You'll regret this," she said, her heels clicking as she left. Ethan stared at the door, the weight of her words sinking in. He'd crossed a line and there was no turning back. Naya, unaware of the confrontation, boarded the morning bus to school, her phone heavy with the photo. She decided to find Sarah Thompson, the auditor she'd overheard Ethan mention. If anyone could use her evidence, it was her. But as the bus rumbled through Atlanta's streets, Naya's phone buzzed again. Another text, same unknown number. "You were warned. Keep pushing, and it's not just the job." Her stomach twisted, fear clawing at her resolve. She glanced around, half expecting eyes in the crowd. At school, Nia slipped into the computer lab during a free period, her hands trembling as she emailed Sarah an anonymous tip. "Check Raven Holdings. Miriam Caldwell's name is on the account. Look at the stock patterns." She attached the spreadsheet photo, her heart racing. The truth was out, but the web was tightening. Not just around Miriam, but around Nia herself. She'd exposed a predator, and predators didn't flee. They fought. As Nia left the lab, her phone vibrated once more. A photo this time. Her, walking home last night, her hoodie unmistakable. The caption, "Careful, Nia." She froze, the hallway blurring. The numbers had led her to the truth, but the truth had led her to danger. She was in deeper than she'd imagined, and the shadows were closing in. The fluorescent lights of Pinnacle Enterprises' HR office buzzed like a swarm of trapped bees, casting a sterile glow over Nia Jackson and her mother, Loretta, as they sat on hard plastic chairs. It was 10 a.m., and the Atlanta skyscraper's lower floors felt worlds away from the gleaming boardroom where Nia had dropped her bombshell yesterday. Her janitor's badge, still clipped to her hoodie, felt like a brand of shame now. The HR manager, a woman with a pinched face and a clipboard, delivered the news with clinical precision. "Mrs. Jackson, your contract is under review. You'll be on unpaid leave until further notice." Loretta's shoulders stiffened, her hands folding tightly in her lap. Nia's stomach churned. This was her fault. The manager's eyes flicked to Nia, cold and appraising. "You're not staff, so you're no longer permitted in the building." The words were a door slamming shut, locking Nia out of the fight she'd started. She'd exposed the $12 million siphoned to Raven Holdings, linked to Miriam Caldwell, Pinnacle's CFO. But the cost was immediate. Loretta's job, their rent, their fragile stability. As they left the office, Nia whispered, "This is because of me, Mom. I'm sorry." Loretta's face was unreadable, her voice low. "You're brave, Nia. But this is bigger than us. I clean floors to keep us fed, not so you can play detective." The words stung, but Nia saw the fear in her mother's eyes, a fear that mirrored her own. They stepped into the elevator, the descent a silent sentence. Outside, Atlanta's heat hit like a slap, the city's pulse indifferent to their unraveling world. Nia glanced back at the skyscraper, its glass facade a mirror hiding the rot within. At home, Nia retreated to her room, the apartment's thin walls amplifying the hum of the city. Her phone, a lifeline and a curse, lay on her bed. The anonymous threats. "Stop snooping or your mom's job is gone," and the photo of her walking home captioned "Careful, Nia," burned in her memory. She hadn't told Loretta about them, couldn't bear to add more weight to her mother's burden. But the danger was real, a shadow stalking her every step. Nia opened her email, rereading the anonymous tip she'd sent to Sarah Thompson, Pinnacle's auditor. Miriam's name on the Raven Holdings account, the stock patterns, the spreadsheet photo. Had Sarah seen it? Was it enough? Nia's fingers hovered over the keyboard. She needed to know more to stay ahead of the threats. She logged into a public financial database, her heart racing as she dug deeper into Raven Holdings. A new lead emerged. A shell company, Apex Dynamics, Pinnacle's rival, had purchased Pinnacle stock in small, timed bursts, aligning with Raven Holdings' transfers. The realization hit like a thunderclap. Apex was using Miriam to weaken Pinnacle, planning to buy it cheap when it collapsed. Nia's breath quickened. This wasn't just theft. It was corporate warfare, and Miriam was the traitor within. She had to reach Sarah. Nia had overheard Ethan mention her name, a trusted auditor with a knack for uncovering fraud. Using a burner email, Nia sent another message. "Apex Dynamics. Is behind Raven Holdings. Check their stock buys, Miriam's working with them. She attached a screenshot of the Apex transactions, her hands trembling. The truth was a wildfire, and Nia was fanning the flames, but each step drew the shadows closer. At Pinnacle, Ethan sat in his office, the Q3 projections tablet a silent accusation on his desk. Sarah Thompson's report had confirmed Nia's claims, $12 million funneled to Raven Holdings, all under Miriam's signature. Ethan's confrontation with his aunt had left a scar. Her suspension, her veiled threat. You'll regret this. Now, Sarah burst in, her laptop open. Ethan, I got an anonymous tip. Raven Holdings links to Apex Dynamics. They're buying Pinnacle, stock timing it with the transfers. Miriam's not just stealing, she's handing your company to your rival. Ethan's jaw clenched, betrayal cutting deeper than he'd imagined. Miriam raised me, he said, his voice hollow. Why? Sarah's eyes softened. Resentment, maybe. She's been in your shadow too long. Ethan nodded, his resolve hardening. Find the tipster. They know more than we do. Sarah hesitated. It's likely the girl, Nia. She's in over her head. Ethan's gaze drifted to the city skyline. Then we protect her. Nia, unaware of Ethan's resolve, faced a new threat. Her phone buzzed as she left school. A third message from the unknown number. You're not invisible anymore. Attached was a photo of her in the computer lab taken through the window. Her knees buckled, fear coiling like a snake. Someone was watching, tracking her every move. She scanned the street, the crowd a blur of strangers. Was it Miriam? Apex? The weight of her actions pressed down. She'd exposed a conspiracy, but at what cost? Desperate, Nia called Jamal, her friend with brokerage experience. Jamal, I'm in trouble, she whispered, recounting the threats. His voice was steady. Nia, you're poking a hornet's nest. Apex plays dirty. Lay low and find someone inside Pinnacle you trust. Nia nodded, though he couldn't see. Sarah Thompson was her only hope, but reaching her meant risking exposure. She sent one final email, her heart in her throat. I'm the tipster. I have more proof. Meet me at the library, 6 p.m. tomorrow. Please. As night fell, Nia sat by her window, the city's lights a distant promise. Loretta was at a neighbor's seeking temp work, leaving Nia alone with her fear. The apartment felt smaller, the walls closing in. Her phone stayed silent, but the threats echoed, each one a step closer to danger. Nia's gift for numbers had pulled her into a war she hadn't chosen, and now the battlefield was her life. She clutched the phone, the spreadsheet photo her only weapon. Sarah had to listen. Someone had to. In Pinnacle's basement, Sarah checked her email, finding Nia's latest message. Her eyes widened. The girl's got guts, she muttered, forwarding it to Ethan. She's our key, but she's a target now. Ethan stared at the skyline, his empire teetering. Nia had seen the truth he'd missed, and now her life hung in the balance. Find her, he said, before they do. Nia closed her eyes, the city's hum a faint lullaby. The numbers had led her here, to a precipice where courage met fear. She was a janitor's daughter, a girl with no power, yet she'd shaken an empire. But the shadows were near, their claws sharp. Tomorrow she'd meet Sarah, or she'd fall. Either way, Nia wouldn't run. The boardroom on the 32nd floor of Pinnacle Enterprises' Atlanta skyscraper was a crucible of glass and steel, its walls framing a city that pulsed with secrets. At 7 p.m., the room crackled with tension. The air thick with the weight of betrayal. Ethan Caldwell, Pinnacle's 42-year-old CEO, stood at the head of the mahogany table, his face a mask of resolve. The tablet with the damning Q3 projections lay before him, its numbers a silent indictment of his aunt, Miriam Caldwell, the CFO. Tonight, the board would decide Pinnacle's fate, and Nia Jackson, a 15-year-old janitor's daughter, was the spark that had ignited this reckoning. Nia stood near the door, her janitor's badge replaced by a visitor's pass, her hoodie a stark contrast to the executives' tailored suits. Her heart pounded, but her eyes were steady, forged in the fire of threats and truths. She'd exposed $12 million funneled to Raven Holdings, linked to Miriam and Pinnacle's rival, Apex Dynamics. Anonymous texts, "You're not invisible anymore," and photos of her in vulnerable moments had stalked her, but Nia hadn't backed down. Her meeting with Sarah Thompson, Ethan's auditor yesterday, had cemented her role. Sarah's evidence, built on Nia's tips, was now a weapon, and this boardroom was the battlefield. Ethan's voice cut through the murmurs. "We're here to address a breach of trust," he said, his gaze sweeping the 8 board members. "Sarah Thompson has uncovered a conspiracy to bankrupt Pinnacle, and it starts with Raven Holdings." Sarah, her laptop open, stood beside him, her sharp eyes scanning the room. Nia felt the weight of every stare, some curious, some hostile, but she held her ground. She wasn't just a girl anymore. She was a witness to a crime. Sarah clicked her laptop, projecting a spreadsheet onto the wall. Over 18 months, $12 million was transferred to Raven Holdings, a shell company, she said. Each transfer, authorized by Miriam Caldwell, coincided with Apex Dynamics' stock purchases, weakening Pinnacle's value for a hostile takeover. Gasps rippled through the room. A board member in a gray suit leaned forward. "Miriam? Our CFO?" Sarah nodded, displaying emails between Miriam and Apex's CEO. Their language coded but damning. "She's been orchestrating this from within." Nia's pulse quickened. She'd sent those emails to Sarah, pulled from a hacked database she'd accessed with Jamal's help. The risk had been immense. Her mother's job, her safety, but the truth demanded it. Ethan turned to the video screen where Miriam appeared, her face composed, her pearls gleaming. "Miriam," he said, his voice. "Do you care to explain?" Miriam's laugh was a blade, sharp and cold. "Ethan, this is absurd. You're letting a teenager and a paranoid auditor ruin us. These are clerical errors, nothing more." Her voice was silk, but Nia saw the flicker in her eyes, the same crack she'd noticed in the boardroom days ago. Miriam was cornered, and predators fought hardest when trapped. Ethan's jaw tightened. "Nia, step forward." The room stilled as Nia approached the table, her sneakers loud in the silence. She felt the board's eyes, judging, doubting, but her voice was clear, a beacon in the storm. "The numbers showed the truth," she said. "Every transfer to Raven Holdings was timed to weaken Pinnacle's stock. I checked the patterns. $500,000, $1.2,800,000, all hitting before sell-offs. Apex is positioning to buy you out by Q4. Miriam's signatures are on every transaction." The board erupted in murmurs. A woman in a navy blazer shook her head. "She's a kid. How does she know this?" Sarah interjected, her tone firm. "Nia's evidence led us to the emails, the accounts, the stock buys. She saw what we missed." Nia's cheeks burned, but she stood tall, her gaze locking onto Miriam's image. "You hid it in plain sight," Nia said, "but numbers don't lie." Miriam's composure cracked, her smile twisting. "Ethan, you're humiliating yourself. A janitor's daughter? Really?" The words were venom, but Ethan's voice was steel. "She's the only one who saw the truth. You betrayed us, Miriam." He nodded to Sarah, who played a recorded call, Miriam's voice clipped and cold, to Apex's CEO. "Push the next transfer. Ethan's distracted." The room froze, the betrayal a physical weight. A board member slammed his fist on the table. "This is treason," another demanded. "Where's the money now?" Sarah displayed a Cayman Islands account, Miriam's name prominent. "Frozen," she said. "The FBI's tracing it." Miriam's face on the screen went pale, her pearls suddenly garish. "Ethan," she said, her voice softer, pleading, "I protected you. This is a mistake." Ethan's eyes were stone. "The mistake was trusting you." He turned to the board. "I move to freeze all transfers and request a federal probe into Apex Dynamics and Miriam Caldwell." The vote was swift, unanimous. Miriam's screen went dark, her connection cut, but her absence felt like a storm gathering strength. Nia's Knees trembled, relief and fear colliding. She'd won this battle, but the war was far from over. Ethan approached her, his voice low. "You saved us, Nia. I owe you more than I can say." His gratitude was a lifeline, but Nia's mind flashed. To the threats, the photos. Someone was still watching, and Miriam wasn't alone. As the board dispersed, Sarah pulled Nia aside. "You're a target now," she whispered. "Lay low until the FBI moves." Nia nodded, her throat tight. She'd exposed a conspiracy, but the shadows were restless, their claws sharp. She glanced at Ethan, who stared out the glass walls, the city's lights a distant promise. He'd lost an aunt, a mentor, but gained a truth he couldn't ignore. Nia left the boardroom, her visitor's pass heavy in her pocket. The hallway was quiet, but danger lingered, a pulse beneath the marble. She'd shaken an empire, but at what cost? Loretta's job was still in limbo, and the anonymous texts were a ticking clock. Nia's gift for numbers had brought her here, to a precipice where courage met consequence. She stepped into the elevator, the descent a moment of calm. Before the storm, the truth was out, and the boardroom was only the beginning. Whatever came next, Nia was ready, or she'd have to be. The late afternoon sun bathed Pinnacle Enterprises' Atlanta skyscraper in a golden haze, its glass facade reflecting a city that felt reborn. Inside, on the 32nd floor, the executive suite was quiet. The frenetic energy of the boardroom showdown 3 weeks ago, replaced by a tentative calm. Nia Jackson, 15, stood in the reception area, her sneakers scuffing the marble floor, her janitor's badge long gone. She wore a borrowed blazer over her hoodie, the fabric stiff and unfamiliar, a symbol of the new world she'd stumbled into. Her mother, Loretta, sat beside her, her cleaning uniform traded for a simple dress, her hands clasped tightly. They'd been summoned by Ethan Caldwell, Pinnacle's CEO, and the weight of that call hung heavy, hope laced with fear. Nia's mind replayed the chaos she'd unleashed, exposing $12 million funneled to Raven Holdings, orchestrated by Miriam Caldwell, Ethan's aunt and Pinnacle's CFO, in league with rival Apex Dynamics. The boardroom confrontation had been a crucible, Nia's numbers and Sarah Thompson's evidence dismantling a conspiracy to bankrupt Pinnacle. Miriam had vanished, her accounts frozen, the FBI hot on her trail. Apex faced federal charges, and their takeover plot was in ruins. But the cost lingered. Loretta's job had been suspended, and anonymous threats, "You're not invisible anymore," still haunted Nia's phone, a shadow that refused to fade. The receptionist, a young woman with a kind smile, gestured toward Ethan's office. "He's ready for you." Nia's heart thudded, her palms damp. Loretta squeezed her hand, a silent anchor. They stepped into the office, a sanctuary of walnut and glass, Atlanta's skyline sprawling beyond. Ethan stood by the window, his suit crisp but his eyes weary, carrying the weight of betrayal. Sarah Thompson was there too, her laptop closed, her presence a quiet reassurance. "Nia, Mrs. Jackson," Ethan said, his voice warm but measured. "Please sit." Nia perched on the edge of a leather chair, Loretta beside her. Ethan didn't sit. He paced as if the words he needed were scattered across the room. "3 weeks ago," he began, "I nearly lost this company, not to a bad deal or a market crash, but to someone I trusted with my life." His gaze flicked to a framed photo on his desk, him and Miriam now tilted face down. "Nia, you saw what I couldn't. You saved Pinnacle, and I owe you more than words." Loretta's breath hitched, her eyes wary. "Mr. Caldwell, we're grateful, but my job." Ethan raised a hand, his expression softening. "Mrs. Jackson, your position is reinstated, effective immediately, with a raise and full benefits. You're not just staff, you're family now." Loretta's shoulders sagged, relief breaking through her guarded facade. Nia's chest loosened, a knot unraveling, but Ethan wasn't done. He turned to Nia, his gaze steady. "You have a gift, Nia. Numbers aren't just data to you, they're truth. I've seen MBAs with less insight than you showed in that boardroom." He leaned against the desk, his voice earnest. I'm funding a full scholarship. Any university, any program. When you're ready, there's a place here in analytics. Leadership, whatever you choose. Pinnacle needs minds like yours. Nia's eyes widened, the words sinking in like sunlight through storm clouds. A scholarship, a future. The apartment in Englewood, the late-night bus rides, the weight of survival. All suddenly lighter, a path opening where none had existed. But the threats flashed in her mind. The photos of her walking home. The chilling, careful Nia. She swallowed, her voice soft but firm. Thank you, sir. I want to study data science. Numbers don't lie, and I want to keep them honest. Ethan smiled, a rare warmth breaking through his CEO armor. You already do, Nia. You already do. Sarah nodded, her eyes glinting with pride. You're a force, kid. The FBI's got your back now. Those threats are being traced. You're safe. Nia wanted to believe her, but the shadows lingered, a whisper of danger not yet silenced. Loretta's voice broke the moment, tentative but resolute. Mr. Caldwell, why us? Why Nia? Ethan paused, his gaze drifting to the skyline. Because, she reminded me what Pinnacle was built for. Truth, not trust, blindly given. I forgot that, and it nearly cost me everything. He looked at Nia, his voice low. You didn't just save a company, you saved me. The room fell silent, the weight of his words settling like dust after a storm. Nia's throat tightened, not from fear, but from something new. Purpose. She'd been a janitor's daughter, invisible, but her numbers had rewritten her story. Yet the threats loomed, a reminder that Miriam and Apex's reach might not be fully broken. Nia pushed the thought aside, focusing on the moment, the door Ethan had opened. Sarah handed Nia a folder, her tone brisk but warm. Scholarship details, plus a contact for Pinnacle's internship program. You'll need to keep those grades up. Nia took it, her fingers brushing the crisp paper, a tangible promise. Loretta's eyes shimmered, pride warring with worry. You did this, baby, she whispered, but don't let it make you reckless. Ethan escorted them to the elevator, his demeanor softer than Nia expected. You'll hear from us soon, he said. And Nia, if you ever see something off, you come to me, no badge required. The elevator doors closed and Nia met her mother's gaze. Loretta's smile was small but real, a bridge rebuilt. Data science, huh? She said. Better. Not forget your mama when you're running this place. Nia laughed, the sound foreign after weeks of tension. The elevator descended, carrying them from the skyscraper's heights to the city's pulse. Outside, Atlanta buzzed. Horns, laughter. Nia clutched the folder, its weight a shield against the shadows. The threats were still out there. Miriam's whereabouts unknown. Apex's claws not fully clipped. But for the first time, Nia felt seen, not as a girl with a mop, but as a mind that could change the game. As they stepped into the street, the skyscraper loomed behind them, a monument to battles won and wars still brewing. Nia's gift had opened a door, but the path beyond was hers to forge. She looked at Loretta, then at the horizon, where numbers and dreams intertwined. The fight wasn't over, but Nia was no longer alone. She was a spark, and Pinnacle would never be the same. The Atlanta skyline shimmered under a late spring sun in 2030, its glass towers catching the light like facets of a dream forged in steel. Nia Jackson, now 20, stood on the steps of Georgia Tech's commencement hall, her Navy graduation gown billowing in the warm breeze. Her diploma, data science summa cum laude, felt like a key in her hand, unlocking a future she'd once thought unreachable. 5 years ago, she'd been a 15-year-old janitor's daughter, her sneakers silent on Pinnacle Enterprises' marble floors, her gift for numbers a secret weapon that toppled a conspiracy. Today, the crowd's applause was a roar, but Nia's eyes found her mother Loretta in the front row, her face alight with pride, a tear tracing the curve of her cheek. The memory of that crucible lingered, Nia's voice in Pinnacle's boardroom, exposing $12 million siphoned to Raven Holdings by Miriam Caldwell, the CFO and Ethan Caldwell's aunt, in collusion with rival Apex Dynamics. Her numbers, paired with Sarah Thompson's evidence, had unraveled a plot to bankrupt Pinnacle, leading to Miriam's disappearance and Apex's downfall under federal charges. Anonymous threats, "You're not invisible anymore," had stalked Nia, but the FBI's protection and her own resolve had silenced them. Ethan's gratitude, a full scholarship, a promised role at Pinnacle, had been a lifeline, transforming Nia's world from survival to possibility. Now, Nia crossed Pinnacle's lobby, no longer a shadow with a mop, but a junior data analyst, her badge a badge of belonging. The elevator hummed to the 32nd floor, where Ethan's office awaited, its walnut desk and city view a familiar anchor. He rose to greet her, his suit impeccable, his hair streaked with more gray than she remembered. "Nia," he said, his handshake firm, his smile carrying the weight of their shared history. "You're home." She nodded, settling into a chair, her diploma in her bag a quiet triumph. "It feels different," she admitted, her voice steady but laced with wonder. The office, once a battleground, was now a sanctuary. Ethan leaned against the desk, his gaze warm. "You've earned this. Your models are already catching risks we'd have missed, but I have something else for you." He led her to a conference room, its walls adorned with Pinnacle's legacy. A new banner hung, "The Nia Jackson Fellowship for Underrepresented STEM Youth." "It launches tomorrow," Ethan said. "Scholarships, mentorships, a chance for kids who see truths others don't. You showed us the way." Nia's breath caught, her fingers tracing the banner's letters. She saw herself at 15, decoding spreadsheets in the dark, her world bound. By Inglewood's narrow streets, that girl had fought for survival. This woman fought for change. "I'm honored," she said, her voice thick. Ethan's eyes softened. "Speak at the launch. Tell them what you told me. Numbers don't lie, but they need a voice." The launch filled Pinnacle's atrium, a soaring space of glass and light, packed with students, donors, and reporters. Nia stood at a podium, the fellowship's logo, a beacon behind her. Loretta sat up front, her supervisor's uniform traded for a dress, her pride a quiet fire. Nia's voice rang out clear and commanding. "I was invisible once," she said. "A girl cleaning floors unseen, but numbers saw me. They don't care about your name or your place. They speak the truth if you listen. I listened, and it brought me here. To you." The crowd erupted, cameras flashing, but Nia's gaze held Loretta's, a silent vow kept. Ethan took the stage, his voice resonant. Nia didn't just save Pinnacle. She redefined it. This fellowship is her legacy, and ours. He met Nia's eyes, a mentor's pride mirroring a father's. The applause was deafening, but Nia felt a stillness, a certainty that her path was hers to shape. Pinnacle had transformed since Miriam's betrayal. Rigorous audits, open books, a culture of accountability. Nia's role, though junior, was pivotal. Her algorithms spotting patterns that saved millions, her voice heard in rooms once closed to her. As the event ended, Nia and Loretta walked through Atlanta's vibrant streets, the city's hum a song of resilience. Loretta linked arms with her daughter, her voice soft. "You built this, Nia, but don't forget our roots." Nia smiled, their new apartment a step up from Englewood, but the memory of struggle was her foundation. "Never, Mom. That's what keeps me grounded." The skyline glowed, Pinnacle's tower a symbol of battles won. Miriam remained a ghost, whispers of her in exile, her empire ash. Apex was history, its leaders behind bars. Nia's threats had ceased, her safety assured. She carried her badge, her diploma, her purpose, a trinity of power. The numbers had spoken and Nia had answered, rewriting her story from invisible to indelible. As she looked to the horizon, where data and dreams converged, she knew this was only the beginning. A janitor's daughter had become a beacon, and the future was hers to write. And that's Nia's story, a spark of courage that lit up an empire. From a janitor's daughter to a beacon of truth, her journey reminds us that no voice is too small to change the world. What did you think? Did Nia's bravery inspire you, Or did the shadows of betrayal keep you on edge? Drop your thoughts in the comments and let us know where you're listening from, Atlanta, London, or beyond. Your stories fuel ours. A huge thank you for joining us on this ride. Your support means everything. Subscribe to catch our next tale of grit and triumph, and we'll meet you back here soon. Until then, keep listening to the truths that whisper in your own life. See you next time.